In this video, we'll be covering the move command, trim, and extend commands, and adding text and modifying your text. All right, so let's get started with your move command. So the first thing I'm going to do is add some things so we can move it. So let's go ahead and let's just start with a circle here. I don't really care the size. Same thing, we're going to add a rectangle. Don't really care the size here. So if I want to move this circle, it's a modify command. So I know I want to come into this modify area because I'm editing something already on my screen. So I'm going to select move. Again, notice my cursor goes from that plus to a little square, and it tells you exactly what you want to do is select your objects. I'm going to select my circle. You can select unlimited number of items to move, but in this case, since we only want one, we can go ahead and select enter or right click our mouse button. And it wants to know our base point. So if I want to center this circle using my center point in the middle of this rectangle, I'm actually going to choose the center right here. Now, when we move, we can actually do several things to move something. I can just drag my cursor out to the right and or left or along any angle. So there's our polar tracking again. So if you come down here, whoops, there's our polar tracking. So that's based off of the angles that we have selected. So you could drag your cursor anywhere and put the distance and select what how you want it to move. Or you can go ahead and put in coordinates, your XY coordinates. And again, if you do your at symbol, so if I wanted to move it to the left 2 inches and up 2 inches, I would just do my shift 2 for my at symbol. Since I'm moving to the left along my x-axis, it's going to be -2, comma, and since I'm moving up, it would be a +2. So now I just moved this circle slightly. Another way that you can move beyond just selecting it, again, I'm going to right click and choose my center point again. And if your center point doesn't show, if you just move your cursor over your circle, it'll pop up there for you. Again, you can put all those different distances. So I could put it along this 225-degree angle and I can move it 3 inches along that angle. So I can put in coordinates, I can put in a distance and do a direct change there, a direct input. Or I can also use my object snap tracking, that's this little one down here, that allows me, if I want this exactly centered in here, and I don't want to have to move it to this point and then move it over the distance and do measurement, I'm actually going to select this midpoint here. And notice with object snap tracking, it's going to keep it aligned with that midpoint. Then I can also touch this item up here, this horizontal line, and bring it straight down. And you'll see I also have that polar, or excuse me, the object snap tracking. And when it gets close to that midpoint, now I want to show you right now where I'm at is at the midpoint here and completely in line with the original circle, but I don't want it to be there. I need to continue down until it's selected at that midpoint. So you can see how both midpoints are highlighted. And then I can just left click, and now I have moved my circle right in the middle of these two items. So those are the ways that you can move your items. And again, it can be any type of items. It can be lines, it can be arcs, it can be polylines, doesn't matter. You can move anything. You can also move off of like corners, doesn't have to be a center point, could be from a quadrant. So I'm going to select my move, right click and see how it snap into that quadrant, and I could move it. So maybe it needs to be touching this line. I could move it that way as well. And again, if you're not sure why, maybe you don't see the midpoint or the quadrant, do your little drop down arrow and make sure that you have them selected, because whatever you have selected here is what's going to highlight on your drawing. Okay. All right, I'm going to modify this circle by going ahead and selecting it. I'm going to take this grip and just drag it all the way down to the bottom so we have some intersection lines. Because now what we're going to do is the trim command. Trim command is very simple. Again, we're modifying something on our screen. So it's going to be in this modify menu, and you'll see trim. And all the trim does, notice it turns to a square, is whatever you select, if it has 2 intersection points, it will delete whatever you click. So see how it gets lighter and you have the little X. So you know if you select that, it's going to remove it from the intersection points on this horizontal line. If you by chance trim the wrong item, you can right click and you can always come down here to undo. It does not take you out of the command. It just allows you to undo the last item that you did here. So let's go ahead and erase some things. And like, oops, wait a minute, I didn't want that one gone. I can right click and it's going to undo the last trim item that you chose. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter or right click and choose enter, and that ends your trim command. So that makes it real easy. Like if you don't really know, you know where a center point of a circle is and that you need to get rid of some items, it's a really nice thing because now you don't have to know the start and the end for an arc. You can just put a whole circle in and just trim away what you don't need. Now we have something along right here with our trim. There's a drop down menu and you will see extend. Extend allows you to continue a item, whether it's an arc or line, allows, it's not arc, sorry, a line to extend and connect to another item. So like, for example, here it's going to connect to this vertical line. It's just going to extend the line out or continue it, just to continue it on. Okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and do some more lines and we'll play around with some extend. So I'm going to go ahead and do this here. All right, so if I wanted to extend, I'm going to select my line and I can extend this. So see how it shows you what it's extending to. Notice it's extending to this line first because it's the first line that it crosses. If I needed to extend to the other one, I can. Right click and enter or escape. And then you can always come back, drop down menu, and let's say you needed to get rid of just this section of a line. Now you can do that. Okay. All right, last thing that we're going to cover is adding multi-line text. So here is our text option. We have a drop-down menu. We used single line text last week, and this week we're going to use multi-line text. So we're just going to go ahead and select multi-line text, and we're just going to create a box here. So notice that we're creating the start and this and the end. If you've ever used Word or something like that, it's basically like making a text box. And notice as soon as you do that, you're in the text editor here. And here's where I can go ahead, pretty much set up anything I need to for my text. So I'm going to go ahead and just put my name here. Let's put the word Hayden. And I can come in here and again, it's going to work just like a Word document. I can select it. I can change my text. You know, notice that we have all the text that you have typically in Word. Okay. I can come in here and we're not going to talk about layers quite yet because we haven't done the video on layers yet, but I can do a center justification. So as big as I made that box, it's going to center, let's drop down this, it's going to stay centered. I can also do left justified, right justified. I can do double spacing. I can add bullets. And again, this should look very familiar because it's what you do when you're doing emails or using Word. I can come in here and also do, I'm going to hit enter. I can do columns. I can create a symbol. So if I want to do the diameter symbol, for example, diameter 5.0, I can use any of these symbols here. If there's others, you just select other. And it's going to bring up that menu that, again, that character map that you see in Word. You can change your size. I'm going to go ahead and select this right now. It's 0.2 inches because this is set up in an imperial document or an inch document. Let's say I want it to be a ½ inch. Maybe my text isn't big enough. I'm going to type in 0.5 and hit enter. And notice my text is now larger. I can underline my text. Okay. So these are just some items to get used to using. We also have an option in our home menu. We have this annotation tab where we saw this multi-text, and we can do this drop-down menu. And our first option is our text style. So right now, that first text that I put in, I made modifications only to this text. But I can come in here and I can set my text style to be pretty much anything. So I'm going to do my text. I can change it to Times New Roman. It'll show you the style. I can change my height, so I can make it annotative, which we'll talk more about that as the semester moves, but it's relative to the scale. I can go in here, well, you can make it backwards, upside down, you can change the width, you can change the height. So let's say you wanted it 1 inch, you can select that height and you can set apply. And what that did is took the standard document here and overrid everything that's normally for that text style if you are opened a new drawing. So typically what I tell students to do is instead of modifying your standard, is you can do a new and just copy your style one and then come in here and make changes to your overall style. So that way you're not overwriting the standard in your document. Now, when you start a new drawing, it's going to go back to the standards anyway. So once you're finished, you can close this and we'll go back to our annotation and notice it's set to style one, or we could go to the standard, which I made some modifications, and do our multi-line text. And then this time I'm going to go ahead again, type in Nora Hayden. And if you remember, I set the text to 1 inch, so that's why the text is larger. I can select my text again by double clicking and notice our modification or text editor comes in. I can drag my corner and make my text box larger. Maybe I want to center my item. Again, we have a drop-down menu that you can select, and then you can do set even more items like your justification, indentation, things like that. Typically, we don't get into that big of a, that much editing of our text, but you can if you want to. But again, anything that you do in this text editor, it's for this individual text item. If you want to do this for all your text that you're going to be putting in, you're going to modify your original text here. Okay, modify in here. And then every text I make from here on out is going to be this 1 inch. I think it was Times New Roman that I chose. Notice it's not going to be this 1/2 inch that I overridden. Now I can double click and I can, whoops, make sure we're on our text there. And I can always come in here, highlight it. Notice that we have the 1 inch we created. There's the 1/2 inch we created. And now there's a 1/2 inch. So just be consistent with your text when you turn in items. And unless I give you specifics about text styles, text size, and things of that nature, you're just going to use the standard, or you can use anything that you want as long as it's clean and it's consistent through your document. So unless I tell you to use a certain type, then you don't have to. All right, so this covers these commands today. If you have any questions, please reach out to your instructor.